Thank you so much, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, for giving us your time, allowing us to have this conversation with you. 2013, you actually vied, and you didn't manage to clinch that seat. 2017, you left it for Honorable Raila Odinga. 2022, you're leaving it for Deputy President William Ruto. What has made you to shelve your quest for becoming the 5th President of the Republic of Kenya?
Now, the issue of the politics and the decision I took was based on some hard realities, okay? The hard realities that we're facing is that we saw and we could see a very deliberate effort by a section of the government of Kenya and certain people to try and impose a leadership on the people of Kenya. Mm-hmm. And every effort was being put in place to make sure that that imposition is what they would want to have Kenyans buy into, all right? So, looking at it from that perspective and realizing that democracy was under threat, and there's a concerted effort by some individuals within the government of Kenya and beyond who want to push a particular agenda, we're doing everything to make sure that their will is carried. Now, I am a strong believer of democracy and fair play and equal opportunity. So, I realized that the best thing to do is to pull together with other like-minded Kenyans who really want a genuine democratic process, Kenyans to have the right to elect their leaders without intimidation, coercion, without fear, to have that opportunity. And unity brings strength. So it is on this basis that I, as a member of ANC, made a very historic statement on the 23rd of January. The one that I dubbed the earthquake.
The earthquake.
The earthquake.
Yes.
And in that session, we had Ford Kenya and others. And when we made that statement, we made it very clear that there are certain things about the Constitution that we must uphold. Mm-hmm. The freedom of association, the right to choose your friends, the right to be in a political formation that you believe in, and not one that you're being forced into.
All right.
All right? So it's on this basis that I said, let us unite as a Kenyan people to deal with that kind of political arrogance.
You are someone who has served in various leadership positions in this country, served as the vice president for 2 months, served in the Kibaki administration as a deputy prime minister. Then you've served also as a minister. You have a vast experience of leadership in this country. And you have decided to shelve that for the deputy president. What is it that you saw?
I think I'll emphasize this. The threat against democracy, the threat against the free will of the people, the desire by a clique of people to drive an agenda that is largely selfish onto the people of Kenya convinced me that we have to stop them. We have to put Kenya first.
And stopping them is by supporting the deputy president and not running and not going alone?
Stopping them is by pulling our efforts together, pulling our resources together, putting our joint commitment to having a proper and fair chance for all Kenyans to come forward. And then having an agenda that will be able to put the economy of this country at the forefront of what we have to deal with. The cost of living is punitive today to the people of Kenya. It's painful. We have to address it. And I can tell you, the other side does not put that
Then
on the
why
wrong side.
couldn't you just go it alone, or even when you formed Kenya Kwanza, convince your other affiliate parties to support your presidential bid?
These are issues that we talk about, and when we talk about this, you have to put a few things together. What is the reality of the day? If the reality is that this is the best way to operate, you look at numbers, you look at certain issues, and you say, fine, let us then pull together. Jointly, we will be able to succeed.
Right.
Separately, we would not succeed.
All right. Should your supporters in the Western region and in the entire country continue having faith in you? Because this is a man who has said 2017 Raila Tosha, 2022 Ruto Tosha.
There's absolutely nothing wrong in supporting somebody else. All right. And if I'm destined to be a president of this country at one time or the other, it will come to pass. If I'm not, then it will not happen. But I'm not going to live in a situation where we are living in a state of anxiety, literally a state of fear. I think we have issues to correct. And we have to correct them constitutionally. All right? And this opportunity is given to us every 5 years to be able to do that. Okay. So if certain aspects were being put in place to drive a certain narrative, to drive a certain agenda, literally, to create a project, a political project for people to be headed into a particular direction.
Both you and Kalonzo have talked about betrayal. In 2013, President Uhuru Kenyatta was supposed to, if I may say so, step aside or let you run for the presidency because of the case that we're facing at the ICC, but that didn't happen and you decided to go alone. You are a man who has faced betrayal, political betrayal on different occasions. Are you not fearing another betrayal?
I don't want to live in fear. And nobody should live in fear. All right? But that does not mean that we need to have people betraying us. There are issues that we can overcome. And as far as I'm concerned, what happened in 2013 is water under the bridge. We have to move forward. Beyond that, we then created, and I pushed for the formation of NASA, so to speak. Perhaps maybe there's something here. I always create something that eventually captures the imagination of the people. But I pushed for the formation of NASA, you know that. But there were certain things that we set out and agreed to in NASA, but they were rubbished. It was very clear that either you would win or you would not win. But the least that people would have expected is that if you enter into the coalition agreements, keep your word. Keep your word. Because if you are ready to run away from your commitments in such situations, then tell me what you will do to Kenyans if you're given that opportunity. Yeah.
And just still on that NASA coalition agreement that you signed, were you aware of the agreement that Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka had with Honorable Raila Odinga?
Absolutely not.
You were not aware of it?
I was not aware.
You heard about it during the press briefing that...
Yes, we saw it for the first time when I think Kalonzo was bringing it up, but they never showed us that agreement. Yeah.
So you're saying you're a man who doesn't live in fear. You don't have any fear of being betrayed again in Kenya Kwanza. You shelved your presidential ambition for Deputy President William Ruto, and politics is about the game of numbers. So what numbers are you bringing in for Kenya Kwanza, for the Deputy President, owing to the fact that
I think what
ODM party also has a strong political support base in the Western region?
I think at the end of the day, the numbers will become apparent on the 9th of August, after the Kenyan people have voted. But just to be able to debunk this notion, I don't know whether you have followed the history that some of us were members of ODM initially, all right? And we helped build ODM in Western Kenya. Okay, so the support base that ODM was enjoying, or the support they were enjoying, was because we helped in entrenching that in the Western region. Okay, but going forward, it has become very apparent that the original ideals around ODM shifted dramatically. Okay, so the confidence levels in ODM are not the same as they were, and anybody who continues to move around with that illusion is deluding themselves. All right. By the way, in the last election, even in Kakamega County, if we were to go by it, in the last election, forget where we are going. Do you know that ODM retained only 2 MPs in the whole of Kakamega County, out of 12? ANC had more MPs. And even Jubilee had more MPs than ODM in Kakamega. So let's move away from this notion
that the ODM party has a strong support base.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they have zero. They have some support, all right? But they should not delude people that they have the kind of support that used to be there.
All right, so when you went to form Kenya Kwanza, and there's so many members of parliament from the ANC who actually said, we are not supporting this. Where did it leave you?
It left me much stronger. By the way, the ones who were bought, so to speak, or lured into other political formations.
But when you say they were bought, they were lured, can you substantiate your statement? That indeed they were bought?
Oh yes, they came. Some of them came to talk to me. They came to me and they said that they're receiving promises of funding for their next election and so forth. So that is why they have to make a decision, because they want to be assured that they'll have resources to fund themselves. What does that tell you? So I will not mention their names, but they talked to me like the way we are talking. And those were some of their comments.
And on Sunday, you deposited the Kenya Kwanza Coalition Agreement. And part of this agreement indicates that there is a 70% share. I mean 30%, so 15 NC, 15 Ford Kenya, sorry for that. Kindly unpack for us.
It will come out. It's a document that is in the public domain. I'm sure even you will be able to access it from the Register of Political Parties. I think what we need to establish here is that coalition building is about political parties putting their agenda together and how they intend to be able to govern. Okay? This is basically what the manifesto gives a lot of detail, but a coalition agreement is what kind of partnership, and those partnerships are usually based on some very basic or core agenda items. And the core agenda item for us to come together is about making an economy that works for all, fairness in the economy, justice in that economy. Having a situation where, for Kenya they say tunataka haki na usawa. We say we want uchumi bora na pesa mfukoni. The UDA says they want kazi ni kazi, and they want the bottom-up approach. So basically, we may have different approaches, but at the end of the day, we are all focusing on the economy.
But Honorable Mudavadi, for Kenyans who are not able to get a hold of this document, this 15% is what, we want to know what this 15% will entail for the ANC party.
Basically, for the ANC party, it entails participation in the governance of this country. All right? governance in all spheres, in public offices, in parastatal sectors, basically public profile of this, so that we can have a situation where there is participation. Okay, and I also want to dissuade people from one thing. Remember, this is a coalition of parties. Okay, it's not an ethnic document. Because if you are to go with the ethnic issue, the register of political parties will not register your party.
All right.
So remember, it is political parties getting together.
So what has Honorable Musalia Mudavadi done, or the ANC party done, to justify that indeed you deserve 15%?
Well, there are a number of issues. Our agenda is critical. We are going to marshal our support nationally, where we have ANC support. We want to make sure that that support translates into votes. And the consequence of it is that ultimately, then we will be able to participate effectively in the next government after the election. That is what we want. All right? And it is not unique, because you will remember that when the Jubilee government first went in, they talked of URP and TNA. And at that time, they talked about a 50-50 share in the government at that time. So the issue of trying to apportion what you would call a degree or a level or a quantum of participation in that government is a clear indication that Kenyans want inclusivity in their government.
And it's good you're telling us that this 15% entails being involved in the governance, and that simply means being given some appointments. But as much as you're talking about the 15% for the ANC party, what have you bargained for as Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, and where are we likely to see you should Kenya Kwanza take that seat?
I think what I want Kenyans to do is to be able to have an opportunity to look at the document. But I will tell you, my anchor and my priority is to make sure that we have a government that will focus on improving the welfare of the Kenyan people. That is what I would like, frankly speaking.
So at no point?
You see, it's not a do or die in terms of what position one holds.
Yes, it is.
What is important? What is important? Okay? There must be pioneers in this country. Pioneers who will continue to push for that higher ideal that you are asking me about. Pioneers who will say that what we need to put on the table is an agenda that will remove Kenyans from the morass that they are in today.
Yes, I know you have that passion for Kenyans, and that is something you've been talking about, especially when it comes to economy. But allow me to ask you this question again, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, with all due respect. Politics is, as you said, and we've agreed, it's a game of numbers. And you also want to know what you're taking. And that's why I'd ask you the question, what is it for Musalia Mudavadi in Kenya Kwanza? And where will we see Musalia Mudavadi should Kenya Kwanza take the presidency seat?
What I would tell you is this: the document is available. Maybe even by tomorrow or whatever, it will be out there. You can access it. Let Kenyans see what it is. But what is important is that we will want men and women who can provide a very serious influence in the right direction for the people of Kenya. Yes.
All right. So you seem like you're holding that information so tightly to your chest. You don't want to tell your supporters.
You will get it. You will get it.
All right. So when we look at the Mount Kenya region, it seems to be, it's turning out to be the darling of these two coalitions. We're talking about Azimio coalition, we're talking about the Kenya Kwanza coalition, and that is where all eyes are on right now when it comes to the deputy presidency seat, the candidate to come from that region. Do you think that the Kenya Kwanza team should not actually focus on Mount Kenya region?
All I can say is that there are deadlines to be met in terms of that particular question. It's just a few days. I think let's hold out and see what decisions shall be made, because I would be presumptuous to assume that even though people may be showing some interest in those regions, to assume that their decision will necessarily be based there. So I may be wrong, or we may be wrong. So why don't we give them an opportunity, these formations, to make their decision before we jump to any final conclusion.
But I mean, being an NC party leader, you also have a say on who the deputy president would pick.
Let that come out. We have a few days to go.
So in Kenya Kwanza, we are seeing the names of, Senator Kindiki being floated in as, the better option. But what stands between you and that seat?
Let that decision come through. I'm trying to put it very clearly that from where I started, it was not about the positions. It was about what we want to deliver for the people of Kenya. All right? And we must also realize that it's the goodwill that you have in a government at the end of the day that can make the difference on how the output or the work that you are assigned to do will be. All right? We are living in a situation where what we have seen is rather unprecedented. Okay, we never anticipated that we would live in a situation where the president and his principal assistant can work at cross purposes the way we have seen here, and the constitutional power is vested in the president of the day, and that president can assign responsibilities within his government in accordance with the constitution. So we are coming from a situation where we have seen that it is the goodwill around the people in office that really matters.
Right.
Yeah, it's not just about you having that opportunity. If you're given an opportunity and you're told to serve, and somebody deliberately then makes sure that the tools of the trade are not made available to you, then what would be the purpose of holding out in that particular position and assume that that's the way to go? Right. So the message I'm trying to put across is it is going to be a collective goodwill that will matter, that will make the difference for the people of Kenya.
So at what point did you have that quote-unquote a political Damascus turnaround? When did you see the light? Because here you're working with a person, a man that you poked holes into the bottom-up, approach, a man that you've, on several occasions, before you joined hands with him, talked about corruption. What point did you get to that point?
I think we as we talk about economic models, we must think about them from time to time and review them, because sometimes it can be very difficult to fund some of these models. That's a fact. Okay? So we will have to be realistic as we move across and as we move forward, that as we deal with our programs, where we want to put more emphasis on the needy in this country, the ones who are at the bottom of the pyramid, so to speak, we must also be very realistic on how we are going to raise the funds to be able to achieve that. So that kind of discourse or discussion is essential, and it must continue, okay, throughout the process of talking about. But the overall goal is not a difference. So if then there's a Damascus moment, then it's a Damascus moment for all of us. All right, because equally the UDA party must also be asking themselves, yes, he was a critic of some of our policies. We also are a critic of some of his policies, but we can get together. Yeah.
What we're seeing right now in this country is what Kenyans are saying is politics of disuniting this country. We have seen the president and his deputy talk at each other, not to each other, but at each other. Even at some point, you're on record, even calling Honorable Raila Odinga mtu wa kitendawili. This is a man you worked closely with, and people are asking, when you're with him, he was not a man of kitendawili. On this other side, you're seeing him as a man of kitendawili. So some of those political utterances that is dividing this country, you're working very closely with the deputy president. Don't you think it's a high time that you asked him to tone down on his political utterances and actually tried maybe make him to have a handshake with the president?
Let me ask you, a handshake anchored on what?
On showing Kenyans that indeed we are on different political paths, eyeing a different...
I think we've been treated to some very interesting displays in the last few weeks at public places. Was it at Parliament? When Kibaki was lying in state. Unless you didn't see it. But I thought you saw the president walk out of his car and his deputy president was there to receive him. And the president chose to do a COVID handshake, jumped a few people, but when he got to Kalonzo, he shook his hand. So who are you blaming here? The same thing, I think, happened at Nyayo Stadium the other day, at the same state funeral. So let's figure out in which prism are we looking at these things. Okay? And therefore, when we talk of a handshake, what is the handshake anchored in? Is it anchored on sinking sand, or is it on a solid foundation? Okay, you talk of divisive politics right now. When the famous handshake took place, weren't we told that this is the handshake that is going to unite the people of Kenya and bring them together? And right now you're telling me that the country seems more divided than before, which means that handshake never worked.
And so right now, you're saying what has brought you together is about the economy of this country, the well-being of this country, and for Kenyans at large.
Yes.
The deputy president has been in leadership for the last 10 years. And when you talk about, during your political campaigns, utterances, this government has borrowed more than it should, they've put this country to a big debt. Why do you seem to be distancing the deputy president from this debt that the Jubilee administration, which is part of?
Can I tell you something? A few days ago, we talked about there being no cabinet meetings for a very long time. Believe you me, this week, for the first time in almost 2 years, notice has now been sent out for a formal cabinet meeting for those who are members of the cabinet. What does that tell you? So who was making those decisions earlier? How are they being arrived at?
But the deputy president is part of this government.
Well, but who chairs a cabinet meeting?
Are you trying to say that the DP should not also take blame for some of the ills that are bedeviling this country when it comes to the management of this country?
When you talk to him, he says, for the first 5 years, they worked as a team. And he can attest and defend what was there for the first 5 years. But after the elections of 2017, he ceased to be in the inner lane. Other people came into the picture and they moved on.
Right, and as we wind up this conversation, what's next for you? In case, I'm not a prophet of doom, but just in case the Kenya Kwanza team doesn't clinch this seat.
Once the Kenyan people have made their decision, and they've done it freely and fairly, you must respect the will of the people.
Okay.
That is how it has been. If you go into the past, I've been in a formation where elections have been won by other people, and I've respected it. At a very personal level, in 2002, I lent my support to Uhuru Kenyatta when Moi was rooting for him, and at that time he was wearing the shoe of the project. You remember in 2002? I supported him. We lost. And in the process, I lost my seat. I was even offered to be a nominated member of parliament. And in the history of Kenya, I said no. If the people of Kenya have made a decision, and of Sabati as a constituency, and indeed by extension Kenyans, that they wanted to vote in Kibaki as the NAC, on the NAC ticket as the president of Kenya, we need to respect that. And I turned down even a nomination. I said, I would like to be in parliament then, but go through the front door, not through the window. Okay? That is the kind of position I hold when it comes to matters of this nature. And equally, now the irony is there, that the person who really propelled the agenda for NAC and branded Uhuru a project is now wearing Uhuru's shoe of 2002. He's now wearing that shoe. That is how politics is.
All right. Thank you so much, ANC party leader.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching KTN News. And only the best way that we can, we'll continue getting the voices of the newsmakers here in the country, just to pique their mind on some of the developing stories when it comes to politics, 2 months away to the general elections. My name is Brenda Z. Aradido. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.